Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. In this episode, I interview Lauren Lester. Lauren is the founder of Lester Law and co-founder of A Different Practice, a platform and community helping law firms do things differently. In her own practice, Lauren has never billed by the hour and, like me, has an endeavor trying to help other lawyers find success and balance in their practice without billing time. This is my third conversation with Lauren, and like always, she provides a wealth of insight for you. Thank you to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes and more on them later. You could sign up for the waitlist for my subscription seminar at subscriptionseminar.com. And the waitlist is almost up, with pricing and training starting in July of 2023. So get in while there's still room. The podcast is finally getting more traction, so please rate and review it if you haven't already to help others discover the show. And as always, please share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Lauren Lester, thanks so much for coming back on Law Subscribed. You're the first-time second guest, and we're so happy to have you back. Welcome back.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and you know, we're going to be talking about your practice. So the last time you were here, you talked about what you and Jess Bednarz are doing to improve the profession. But now we're gonna do a deep dive on how you're practicing law differently. Speaking of practicing law differently, before we get into that, give yourself a little bit of an introduction, and then let's talk about A Different Practice.
Well, I'm Lauren Lester. I have a solo firm out of Denver, Colorado, and I help folks with all of life's major milestones. So from birth to death, marriage to divorce, and offer everything at a flat fee so that all my clients can get quality legal representation at an affordable price.
All right. And then in addition to just practicing law, you also have something else, which you now have a podcast. Last time you were here, you didn't have a podcast.
I know, I was inspired by you.
Oh, well, glad I'm inspiring at least one person out there to do something. And it's called A Different Practice. And that's in all the podcast apps, right?
Yes, available everywhere.
Yep. And you're several episodes in now. And even though I've been doing this podcast for like 2.5 years now, you're catching up to me in episodes because I took forever to start publishing. But obviously links in the show notes to that. Last time you were here, we talked about A Different Practice, back then called On Purpose Legal. It's still the same thing, right? Though it's for lawyers. It's like for other lawyers to practice law differently.
Exactly. Yeah. It's for lawyers, by lawyers, having built my practice a little bit differently and seen the benefits both for myself personally and also for my clients. Teamed up with Jess to try and create resources to help other lawyers be able to build practices that they love. So A Different Practice is really focused on helping solo and small firms optimize their firm for growth and enjoyment.
Right. And it's a really great compliment to Law Subscribed. Like, this podcast is my version of that, right? I'm also practicing law differently. I have the subscription model. I want to give back to the legal community and profession, so this is the way that I'm choosing to do it. But if there are any listeners who want to take it even a step further than just listening, adifferentpractice.com would be a great place to start, right?
Yes, exactly. And the more resources, the better. We love all of the voices in this space. It's much needed.
Yes. And so with that, though, let's get into your law practice. So, you know, you graduate from law school, you get your law license. You know, do you go solo right away? What was your experience like when you got started?
I went solo right away, which now is crazy when I think back, but I must have just been a little naive and that served me well. But I actually came into law as a second career. So I had a background for about a decade in the business world. I was a project manager developing websites. And so having that background, I think, gave me the confidence to feel like I could open my own practice. And I really did go to law school, like most of us, to help people. But for me in particular, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to own my own business, and law was just a really great avenue for me to be able to do that. And so when I looked around and talked to some other folks about, you know, when should I go out on my own? What do I need to do after law school and passing the bar? You know, they all said, well, you can go be an associate for a couple of years. But when I asked them what they learned having done that, a lot of them said, well, I didn't really learn a lot about running my own practice. I'd really just kind of pushed paper for someone else. And I thought, well, this is a second career for me. Like time is a ticking. I don't have a couple extra years. And so I thought, I might as well just jump in the deep end and try it out. I can always go get a job as an associate somewhere. So I had a backup plan and really just sort of dove headfirst into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and especially now with the labor crunch, it's easier than ever to get a job as a lawyer if you're willing to go work for somebody else.
Yeah.
But okay, so then, at least for my law school experience, I didn't learn anything in law school about how to bill,
Correct.
right? So I learned that when I was practicing, and at least when I got started, it was foreclosure defense work. And our clients, interestingly enough, paid us a flat monthly fee every month that we were able to keep them in their homes, which is kind of the subscription model.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty rare that that's your first billing experience as an attorney. So since you didn't even have that, like what did you learn about it in law school, or where did you go to figure out, hey, how should I be billing my clients?
Yeah, I only ever heard about the billable hour in law school. Didn't learn how to do it. It was just sort of a whisper that everyone said, this is just how we do it. And there wasn't really a question of that. But coming from the web development world, all of my developers that I worked with always billed by the hour. So I was familiar with that process and what it looked like. And I was also familiar with being on the client end and being their representative, what their response was to the billable hour in that context. And it wasn't generally good. There was a lot of, same things that we deal with in the legal profession of scrutinizing the bill and asking for discounts. And why did this take this long? And I don't think I should have to pay for this, right? I got that same feedback. So when I heard, we just did the billable hour and that's how it is in legal, I associated that with my given experience in a different profession, but same experience to the client. And when I got into practice, thought, I couldn't afford 350, 400, whatever the going rate was per hour and having no idea where the endpoint was going to be. So I just couldn't in good conscience build a practice that I couldn't be a client of. So I really kind of started there and thought, okay, if I needed to hire a lawyer for this very difficult time in my life, what would I like to see in terms of billing and what the cost would be? And that's kind of where the flat fee and subscription came out of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So where did you look? Because I'm hoping law subscribed or a different practice or even Kim Bennett's Fidu
right
is places people can go, attorneys can go now to learn about it. But at the time that you were launching, where did you go to figure out how to do it?
It was a lot of trial and error because you're right. There weren't any resources out there, which is why I'm so glad that folks like us are trying to put them out there to save people the 5 years that I had to spend trial and error going, oh, that wasn't enough, or that was too much, or this isn't working, or I need to tweak that. So really, having them get to sort of jump ahead in the line, having those resources now, but there wasn't a lot out there. So it was just a lot of throwing stuff against the wall, to be quite honest, and trying to figure out, what value I was bringing to the clients and what they were willing to pay and what value they assigned to it and what they could afford. And it was a lot of tweaking for the first, I don't know, maybe 5 years. I was probably updating my pricing pretty regularly. It's now steadied out, thankfully, and I don't update it too much. But yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, which felt very unsecure and sort of fly by the seat of my pants. But it was really the only option. Like you said, there wasn't a lot of resources to say, this is how you do it. Here's a process to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. If memory serves, you did also do an incubator or accelerator or something like that, right? Or with Jess, or was what was the thing in Colorado, the innovative thing you did with her, where you guys met?
Yeah, so we met at a local bar organization, but she was working at the Chicago incubator. And then when we decided to build one here in Colorado, she and I were both on the organizing committee and the board that sort of launched it. So I had a good hand in creating, again, a program for lawyers who were like, where do I find these resources to be able to build practices that worked for them?
Okay. All right. But you yourself didn't actually have something like that to go to.
I didn't. No. So I graduated law school in Atlanta. I went to Georgia State. And just as I was graduating, they were just starting their legal incubator there. But I had already decided with my husband that we were going to move out to Colorado. So I sort of begrudgingly said, okay, and had to, leave that behind and didn't get that opportunity. And yeah, when I came here at the time, that there was nothing in place. So I'm glad that there's something now in Legal Entrepreneurs for Justice. But yeah, there was not a lot, even just 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So since you've had so many iterations, throughout your practice, like what were some of the lessons that you learned? And if you could, extrapolate a little bit for listeners so that they could learn from your mistakes, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one is really focusing on the value or the problem that you're solving for the client. I think when I came into practice, I only knew what other lawyers talked about. So I drew from their wording, and really that doesn't resonate as much for the consumer. They don't understand what a parenting plan means, but they do understand that they have a problem with the custody schedule for their kids, and they and the other parent can't figure out what works. Mm-hmm. So after trial and error and being able to finally get a clear message that was concise and be able to talk to clients in their language, what is their problem? How can I solve it? That was really a game changer. And that really translated into pricing quite well, because that's how we buy anything, is we look at what the value is. And until I could make that connection, it was a little more troublesome in trying to get clients to understand why it cost whatever it cost. So that's the biggest lesson. And then two, just getting feedback from clients up front. I started doing this pretty early on, but I wish I would have done it probably sooner. And one of the questions that I asked at the end of a matter was, how did the value you received compare to the price that you paid? And I just gave them three options. It was a steal, it was right on point, and it was too expensive. And I would get feedback for probably a year that folks kept saying it's a steal. So I knew that they got a lot more value and they would have paid more for what they got. And so that really gave me the confidence and really the metrics to say, I'm not charging enough here, and be able to kind of bump prices up, which really helped the business as well.
Yeah. I think it's complicated, right? Because also, you do want to, not to put words in your mouth, but like you, the royal you, we attorneys who want to go help people, that's why we go to law school, want to make legal services affordable. Yeah. But we also have to make money to, if you have them, pay down student loans, pay for the mortgage, pay for the kids, pay for all that stuff, right? So like there's a balancing act there. So like, how did you handle that balancing act when you realized you had to start charging more because the value you were providing was worth more?
Yeah, it was a struggle in the beginning. And I think, but for that data directly from my clients, I probably would have been the bleeding heart a lot longer. And I still feel that way. I still get consultations that call it. I'm like, oh, but maybe I should discount it. So it is something I have to push against a lot. But having clients actually say, yeah, I've worked with you, we've gone through the whole case, whatever the outcome was. I think that was always what I struggled with, was I can't control the outcome, but if the judge gives a bad ruling or a ruling not in my client's favor, are they going to come back and be like, I can't believe you charged me that. This is ridiculous. But even with the cases where we didn't get the most favorable outcome, the client still came back and said, no, it was a steal. The value you provided was still way worth what you charged. So having that was really kind of the impetus to go, okay, you know what? I feel bad. I still want to make it affordable, but there is a big difference between even what I charge, which for a lot of folks can be a lot of money, to what even the average still is in Colorado. And I think that transparency and predictability about the pricing, like, yes, it may be $5,000 or $10,000 at the end of the day, but the client knows that up front, versus they get hit with it month after month, and some months are $100 and then the next month is $15,000. And that's where they really start to feel out of control, and that they've lost control of the ship. And so I think all of those pieces still combined, and I still get really great feedback from clients saying that it was still really affordable. They appreciate how I practice. So it is just kind of getting over that hump and believing that you can still do really good work and still provide exceptional service to clients. But just because you're going to make a profitable business doesn't mean that, you have to suffer. We can still be profitable and do it at the same time.
Yeah. And, I think an interesting takeaway there is it's also the nature of your practice, right? Like for why that type of questioning also works for you, because there is a result.
Right.
At the end of the day. So like, and one of the things we're trying to talk about on Law Subscribed is there is no one fits all practice areas for the subscription model and alternative fee arrangements, whatever mixture you're doing there. Like an estate planning attorney, they're not going to know if it was a good estate plan until they're no longer here.
Right.
So how do they know if the value was worth it? But yeah. There's still going to be ways. Attorneys are very creative. Like I'm sure you found with a different practice, like, they all bring their own experience and knowledge, and when they actually start applying when they have a growth mindset and they're applying it creatively, like you're able to come up with your own things here. So while that's a great example of if you're a results-based attorney with the type of practice that you have for your clients, if you're helping them with a real estate transaction, like transactional law, that would be a great question. Those types of questioning would be great because the transaction's then over, and then you could say, hey, did you get a good value for the price, right? So like I feel like with a lot of transactional law, that's good too. So then let's talk about then like your model specifically and how you've had iterations there. Like was it originally just a flat fee, a subscription plus flat fee? Do you have add-ons? Like how do you go about, pricing out that model? And to the extent you want to actually talk about specific prices, I'll leave that up to you. But like let's talk about the like how it's set up.
Yeah, so I've always done flat fee. I love the idea of subscriptions, and I have tried for 7 years to make them work. But both in my family law practice and the estate and probate piece, it just doesn't work as well, particularly with family law, because luckily in Colorado, we don't have very long, hopefully, cases. And so even on a subscription, just breaking up the total fee, it's still a good chunk a month. So the client isn't really getting the benefit of a smaller amount per month over a longer period of time. But I did find that doing a coaching subscription has been pretty successful. So that's really the one subscription I have for folks who just have questions. It's whether they're in the middle of a case, and I even have some folks who just kind of have me on call. They don't have an active case, but they're still co-parents and stuff still comes up, and they want to be able to have someone that they can just pick up the phone, not worry how long it's going to be, and just say, hey, this happened. Should I file something? What should I do? How can we solve this problem? So that coaching subscription has been really beneficial. I've had a couple folks add on to that, and the add-ons and everything else that I do are all flat fee. So no matter the practice area, everything's done on a flat fee. And then I offer different levels of service based on my involvement or based on the scope. So the client can kind of pick what works best for them. All of my pricing is on my website. It does change. So I'm a little hesitant to say this is what it is, because this will be out in the internet forever, but it does change from time to time. But I always have it on the website so everyone can see, clients can see what it is up front and see if it's going to be able to work with them. But I would say 95% of the work I do is just based on a flat fee.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. But the coaching thing is a great use of the subscription, right? And like is one of the benefits like a discounted price on your flat fees?
Yep, exactly. So after 3 months, then if they're a post decree, so they don't have an active case, they just kind of want someone on call. If they are subscribed for 3 months, and they do get a discount if something does come up and they need some more legal services on those additional services.
Right. And that's one of the things. How do you define your subscription benefits, and what's the incentive to keep people subscribed? So a discount on future needs is one of those kinds of incentives to have clients stay subscribed.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, email is really easy for me. It doesn't take a lot of time. I can respond back pretty comprehensively quickly. So my subscription clients know they can email me as much as they want, which I know may sound scary to some attorneys. I have never had anyone abuse it. And then they also get a monthly call for the ones who are within a case, like they have an active case, they need a little bit more. So they do get one monthly call. Again, there's no limit to how long it is. I don't think I've ever had someone go over an hour. So no one abuses it, but they do at least get the freedom to feel like if, they have one quick question, they can shoot an email, they can gather them all up, we can have a call, and they don't ever feel like they're being nickel and dimed. They feel like they have plenty of time to get all their questions answered, which I think is really where they find a lot of value in it.
Mm-hmm. So for the flat fee for like the actual like casework where you're going into court for them, or Zoom court, or however it's being done these days in Colorado. I mean, I know in Illinois we're doing both now. Do you have like you give them like a total number and then they pay that over the course of so many months, and then like there's like a success fee at the end? Like how do you set it up, or they just owe that amount and you could set them up on a payment plan? They could pay it up front. Like what does that process look like?
Yeah. So for me in-house, they either can do it upfront and pay the entire fee, which gets put in for us in Colorado in the trust account, or I have a couple of in-house payment plans. They typically don't go over for my family cases 3 months, because that allows me not to get out ahead of the payment, so that if a client does miss the second payment, I know I haven't done more work than what has been collected would cover. And then for my probate cases, it goes out to 4 months just because those cases are a little bit longer in the tooth. And so they can use either one of those, which a lot of clients take advantage of. The overall cost is a little bit more. So because I'm extending myself, there is maybe a 10 to 15% increase in the overall cost. But for the client, they're paying a little bit less and can pay it over time. And then I also am a partner with Client Credit with Affinity, which obviously offers their own kind of loan system. And I always offer that to clients if they need it more, like they want a 12-month plan or they want to have less per month. I don't want to take on that responsibility of kind of being the bank and, overextending myself. I've had, unfortunately, a couple of clients in the past who I've been the bleeding heart for, and it has not worked out. And so I've kind of made a decision as a business just not to do that. But if a client does want a smaller monthly payment or to pay over a longer period of time, then I send them over to them. And then they give me the basically flat fee up front and take a little bit of a percentage.
Yeah, no, this is the kind of stuff we need to be talking about, right? So like other attorneys can figure out, ways to do it. Okay, so wow, so that's like a really short period of time, like the divorces and probate stuff compared to Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's really something. So for going back to the coaching subscription, like, is that what you call it? Like what?
Yep.
Like what? You just call it the coaching subscription?
Yeah, it's legal coaching. Yeah, I haven't found a better name for it. I'm always playing with names for everything, but the clients seem to understand what it is. It's really just kind of guidance and advice. I don't do any, document review, drafting. I don't talk to any other party. It's really just with the clients, and they all seem to understand the scope just by legal coaching. So I've stuck with it for now.
Okay, all right, and it's just a one flat fee, like the same price. Like it's not like a tiered based thing. It's like if you want legal coaching, it's this one price.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. The only difference is whether they're in the middle of a case, so they have an active case open, or if they don't. So it's slightly less for if they don't have an active case, just because there's typically not as much for us to cover. But within each of those scenarios, yeah, it's just the one. I just haven't found a way to differentiate having a tier. I just don't know what else I would add at this point to have less of a tier. I feel like they wouldn't get as much value. And if I increased it, I'm not sure what I would add in terms of services to justify a higher cost. So for now, just the one makes it easy for me to remember and certainly for the clients to understand.
Mm-hmm. And now that you have clients who are already paying to be able to consult with you, have they come to you with other types of legal issues that are not just divorce or custody or probate related type things? Like how does that like areas of law that are outside the scope of what you practice? Like have clients come to you with that kind of a thing?
Not often. It happens pretty rarely. My clients are awesome, but I think that they understand what my practice areas are. And then sometimes if it does happen, I just let them know that that's just not an area that I cover. Here's a colleague that does. Or sometimes I get a lot of tax questions. That's probably the most common one, both with estate planning and family cases. So then I just sort of refer them, you got to go talk to a tax professional. That is definitely not in my wheelhouse. And I've never had someone be like, no, you have to answer. They all go, yeah, no problem. I just figured I'd ask.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSubscribed at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form at scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSubscribed at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the reasons I was asking is I was thinking about, when attorneys are accessible to the general public, like they could come with all kinds of questions, and I think there's ample opportunity for subscription attorneys, however you've modeled your subscription, to like work together to refer business back and forth, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
now that your clients are not afraid to like call an attorney because they're not, so expensive, I can never afford hundreds of dollars an
Right.
hour. All of a sudden, they could be bringing all other sorts of questions, and it is a business decision to like whether or not you want your clients to know, like, only call me for divorce issues, or I'm your lawyer
Right.
and give me a call, and if I can help you, I'll help you. If not, I'll refer you to somebody else. So
Right.
like that is a business decision, but I wonder if you have to maybe just crack the door open a little bit, Lauren, to your clients and see like,
Maybe
you
you'll give
know,
me something to think about.
because then, and it's hard. One of the things I'm also trying to solve, and trying to answer the question, how do you do referrals for like referral fees for subscription-based, affordable subscriptions? Do
Yeah.
you do a percentage? Like how do you like there's no industry standard on referrals. It's kind of a third depending on the type of case that you refer, if it's ethical in your jurisdiction, and all that. When you factor all those things into account, like how do you make money? Like what's ethical on that? And it's really unknown. So I think we need to solve the more subscription attorneys there are out there. We have to sort of, I have to imagine we'll be referring business back and forth to each other. I mean, would you ever consider growing your practice, or do you like the size of your practice right now?
I love the size of my practice. We do not allow referral fees at all in Colorado. So
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think is the appropriate approach to take, but I think it serves the public to, if someone comes to me and trusts me and I handle family and estate work, and then they have a criminal case, which I am not going to handle, nor would I be competent to, I would feel like it serves the public for me to say, hey, work with this person who I have vetted and know provide flat fee or are affordable or do quality representation, whatever it is, to work with them versus go out into the ether and, good luck on who you find. I think that serves the public, which is my understanding what our ethics rules are trying to help us do. But yeah, in Colorado, we don't allow any referral services. So I've started to look into the idea of having some contract attorneys work with me so that I can expand the practice, expand my services. But I really do like being a solo. It scares me to be responsible for someone's salary or well-being. And so for now, I like being on my own, but have definitely felt the push of the need from the market and from my own clients. And so I'm trying to figure out a way that meets that, but also kind of keeps the balance of, I don't want to be a very big firm. I'm very happy being a solo.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as you with regard to staying a true solo. And like there are platforms out there like Law Clerk and some of
Mm-hmm.
their competitors, but that's certainly the largest one. But even in those terms and conditions, because I was a freelancer on there when I started out as a solo, is like the attorney still has to be able to supervise your work and approve of it, right? And so if you can't hire outside your practice area ethically through that type of platform.
Right.
I see it happening, but I know Law Clerk does everything they can to avoid that. But hiring contractors, on the other hand, that's a way around it, right? Because you're hiring them as a contractor because they are good at intellectual property law or
Right.
tax law
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
something. So I wonder if there's a market opportunity for a law clerk type model for something like that,
Yeah.
right? Or if, and I haven't gotten him to, he's agreed to an interview, though I haven't gotten a set schedule with him yet, but there is an attorney in the Chicagoland area who offers subscription services to other attorneys to show up as local counsel in court.
Interesting. I like that.
And so, yeah, so maybe the subscription model can be used amongst attorneys for contract work or for local counsel or for
Right.
specialized areas of law, right? There's opportunity there.
Love the creativity. We just need more of that in the profession. Like that is just brilliant. I love that approach.
Absolutely. I am trying to craft right now my local transactional counsel subscription for
Yeah.
that. Although at the same time, I'm hoping that the model rules change to allow for multi-jurisdictional practice for transactional law,
Yeah.
right? In which case you wouldn't even need that. So I'm like, well, should I be building that when really I think we're moving in that direction, especially with the most recent House of Delegates, discussion on that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, so much opportunity.
Hmm.
So now let's talk about the technology that you're using. and why you're using it and what technology it is. This is the subscriptions to power your subscription,
Exactly.
type question. So, you do have the coaching, so you are doing something for actual subscriptions, but then also just since you're charging flat fees, you're not billing by the hour, how are you being efficient with your practice?
Yeah. So my favorite ones that I use that really directly relate to the efficiency where I'm taking out the admin work. So I'm always looking for what's a repetitive task I'm doing that isn't directly serving the client necessarily, but needs to happen indirectly to serve them. And so Documate has been in the last year something that I've started using that has been fantastic. So my clients really have a good experience. I get a lot of the information from them. So it cuts down on the data input time. And then I'm able to generate the overall document that I need pretty quickly, because I always feel like the client's not paying me for the document. They're paying me for the peace of mind or the reduced risk or the analysis of their situation to achieve their goals, right? And so obviously going through it, it's not just I click a button and here's your document, but I go through it and make sure it meets the client's goals. But it really just saves on the putting in the names and making sure you find and replace and putting in the right provisions, like that, all that kind of repetitive stuff. So Documate's been really fantastic. I use Zapier to do a lot of kind of the admin work that I just don't like doing or have to do on a repetitive basis. So I use it for things like sending out emails to clients when certain events happen in their case. So they get a quick update to say, this has happened. Here's what it means. Here's what's next. Here's our timeline, just to keep them informed. I use it to make sure that all communications with clients get saved to their Matter. I do use Clio for my case management software, so it automatically saves that. And then I have a couple of internal tasks. So if someone texts me, it gives me an alert to make sure that I respond quickly. So just things like that where the systems themselves didn't work together, but I am able to kind of create that bridge. And then I really love, it's a small one, but it has made such a difference, is Text Expander. So I feel like I write a lot of the same content, like the emails are very similar, right? I have all my instructions are very similar, even for things like abbreviation. So I will write SS for sworn financial statement, but the client has no idea what that means. And so I have a quick shortcut that if I write that, it writes out sworn financial statement. So it's saving me seconds, but over time, it really does add up. And then it just makes the client experience better because they're not getting all of these SFF and all these initials that we roll off our tongue. And they're like, you're speaking another language. Like, what does all this mean? So Text Expander has been huge just in terms of efficiency, making sure all my communication is really clear to the client. I write it once, but then I don't have to repeat that every single time. I can just plop it in the email, send it off, and they know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I haven't heard Text Expander yet, but that is a very useful tool. If you're a Google Workspace or Gmail user, sometimes you see this in your emails where you start to type something and it will automatically do it. But with Text Expander, you can program your own versions of that. Right?
Exactly. And I love that it works across platforms. Like the same keystroke works in my email. It works on my browser. It works in Word. I like that no matter where I'm using it, because I use it in all those different platforms, it still works with the same keystrokes.
Yeah, that is a great time saver. I'm trying to think about how I can incorporate that into my practice, but like the nature of sort of what I do, I don't know where I would use that. But I remember when I was a billable hour attorney, we had that for our putting in our billable time,
right?
Which is not billable time to put in your billable time. So,
but you're writing the same thing over and over again.
Right. And so that really saved a lot of time on the one thing that you didn't want to spend a lot of time on as a billable hour attorney, which is billing your hours and putting in your time. So even if you listen to this podcast and you think I don't want to use alternative fees, at least you got Text Expander out of it.
That's right.
Okay, and then are you a Microsoft 365 Google Workspace user? Which one is which one do you use?
So I'm a Mac user. I do use Google for my email, but I use Word, like Microsoft's. I use Word and Excel, but on a Mac. So I'm not a 365 user, but I do use Dropbox for all of my document storage and management.
Yeah, and that's definitely a subscription.
Yep.
That you're paying.
The number of subscriptions I pay when I do my monthly billing is, yes, quite a few, but they are all worth it.
I know. Well, let's keep them coming. Okay, so Zapier, Dropbox, Text Expander, formerly Documate, now Gavel, right?
Yes. Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh. Yes, they would kill me. Yes, they do have a new name. Sorry, Dorna.
So like any other subscriptions coming to mind?
The only one I can think of off the top of my head is I also use ClickUp for my task manager. And so that allows me to create templates. So when I have a new matter, the tasks are generally the same every single time. So I can easily create it. I really love it because I feel like I can stay on top of things. I don't have that moment where like 3 weeks have gone by and I go, oh crap, I totally forgot about that client. I need to follow up with them because they just don't have a very pressing case. Like there's nothing's on fire. So it really allows me to make sure that when I send something out for review, I can have a task that the next week pops up. And then I go, yeah, I haven't heard back yet. Let me email them back and say, hey, how's that going? So I think a lot of my clients feel like I am on top of communication, on top of their case. And that's really not me. It's really because I've set up this system. But I just like ClickUp because it has a lot of functions to do that. It has dependencies. It'll change deadlines if something gets pushed out. Then they also incorporate a mint feature, which I like. So on like my probate cases, for example, which have just a lot of dates and information and assets and debts and stuff that I just have to keep track of. I like having everything in one spot so I can have my task list. And then also for that same client, kind of like a master document list where it has not only the tasks embedded, but also, you know, this is grandma, this is son, this is this person, these are the assets we need to do, kind of notes about the case. So I really like that they've incorporated that feature as well.
Yeah, I love it. I'm even thinking about doing like an episode just on like attorney tech stacks on like how like all the different, you know, types of things that you could use for that. And like directories like, you know, Bob Ambrosi's Law Next legal tech directory, right? Like have you ever looked at any of those types of directories? I think maybe My Case has one, you know, there's several of them.
Yeah, I've perused a few, nothing in depth, but yeah, I think they're fantastic because it really can be overwhelming. I mean, even if you just Googled task manager, I mean, God knows how many there are out there. And so it's really helpful to hear, especially from other attorneys, because sometimes they don't work. I tried to look at different CRMs recently, and there's a lot of fantastic ones out there, but they don't have features like conflict checks, like, right? Like, so there's certain things that we need in the profession that the softwares that are out there that are built more for the kind of the general business community, which are fantastic. They just don't work for us. So it is really nice to have resources like those tech lists that are built by attorneys who have said, we've vetted this or we've looked at it and it does work for the profession.
Right. Which makes me think of another subscription, if you have one, is like some type of scheduling software.
Oh, like, yes.
Which one do you use?
So I use Acuity. I also use Calendly for something else. So I use both of them and they're fantastic. But Acuity is great. I have it linked up on my website so consults can book their consult on their own. I am not involved with that. That's one of those monotonous, time-consuming things that I hated doing. And then I also have private calendars as well that my clients have access to. So as soon as they sign up, I say, hey, you ever want to schedule a call? Go right here. They can do it on their own time. So they always feel like they have access. They don't have to email me, although sometimes they do, but it's not this sort of like behind the glass, I'm going to get charged just for asking for a call, which I'm then going to get charged for the call. Like they just don't have that nickel and dime feeling. But Acuity and Calendly are both fantastic. I've never had a double book. They work great. I set up all the preferences in terms of make sure you give this buffer. Don't do too many of these types of calls in one day. They're fantastic resources.
Yeah. I think other than like my Google Workspace subscription, I feel like my Calendly subscription is the thing I utilize the most.
Yes.
Talk about getting value.
And they're really cheap. Yeah. I mean, comparatively to what they do, like they're really not expensive per month. And like, yeah, I mean, I almost feel like I don't want them to hear, but I would pay a lot more for how much time they save me.
Right. And something to note too here is it sounds like, because I'm the same way, and you're entrepreneurial, you're going in and you're setting up all these things. Right? You're going in the back end and you're doing all this on your own because you're a solo. But like, what do attorneys do if they want to do all these things? But like, it's not as simple as just signing up for Calendly or Acuity. You have to go say, okay, go in the settings. These calendars are only for clients and do those settings. So like, I wonder, like what do we tell those lawyers who like they get scared when they have to go in and mess with all the settings because they're not like you and I? You know, how do they do it?
Yeah. So I think most softwares I found, if they're good, are pretty user friendly. So I would give it a try first. It may not be as scary as it seems, but if it's something that you just want to make sure you're doing right, especially for calendaring, like double booking, you've got two courts at the same time would be like a nightmare. I would say reach out to a colleague that uses it and ask them if they can spend 10 minutes showing you how they set it up and some of the tricks that they've learned, especially if they're in the same practice area. And then if not, I really think that the kind of virtual assistant, online contractor space is really has a plethora of resources. So even if you paid somebody who is the king of Calendly and that's all they do is just kind of help people get it set up, it can't be that expensive, I would imagine, to have a couple of hours of their time to go, this is what I want it to do. Can you just set it up so that it does that?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. And also like YouTube, see what other people are doing.
Most answers are on Google. Yeah. As we probably know as lawyers, because I know we've all gotten the call. I Googled this and this is what it said. But for Calendly, I think you're a bit safer.
Right, I agree. And I think Calendly also has they have like their knowledge base and stuff that explains things, but sometimes it's easier to just search in Google and get the link to that thing. So, all right, the another thing I'm starting to ask attorneys who are coming on the show is, you could have all the technology, you could have the model figured out, you could have all that, how to practice law really well. But what are you doing to get clients? Like how do you keep the business
question.
How do you keep the business afloat? What's working?
Yeah. So for me, I certainly leaned into, in the beginning, my background in the web development space. So I did develop my own website. I did all of the SEO that I knew, and that really has helped me build a foundation up to this point. But in the last year or so, I really do believe that video is where marketing is going. I think, the platforms like TikTok, which I absolutely adore, but even YouTube, Google is starting to serve up, like you just said, if I type in, how do I set my preferences in Calendly? Most of the top options now are videos of people showing you how to do it. So I think that that's really where the internet sort of marketing is going. And so I've really leaned into videos more, which is really self-conscious and nerve-wracking in the beginning, but kind of pushing through that discomfort. I have a TikTok account that I try and post on every day, just providing information to folks. It's really fun. I hope more lawyers will do it. But then also on YouTube, again, posting the same information of what is child support? How does it work in Colorado? I mean, there's no legal advice being given because I'm just talking to myself on a screen, but people find so much value in just the basics. Like it's just a space that feels very scary to most people because they've never encountered the legal system. They have this problem. They've heard nightmare stories online or from friends. And so just really giving them the basics is such a huge help. And I've had so many leads come through by saying, I watched your video on YouTube and you were so helpful. And I feel like I could talk to you and you seem so nice. So you build a rapport with someone before you ever actually talk to them in real life, which is a huge, I think, selling point in terms of marketing and getting those leads, is I feel like I've made a sale before even talking to them just by putting a video up.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And even to a certain extent, like live video.
Yep.
Yeah, being able to do stuff live and incorporating that somehow. But that's a whole other podcast episode. We already kind of went into the last time you were here, access to justice and women in the profession and how, the model alternative fees, are really are mostly being picked up by attorneys of color, women, and, people who don't look like me, basically. And so, any more thoughts on just sort of the access to justice angle on alternative fees and why women and attorneys of color are the ones who are innovating the most in this space?
I mean, I will biasly say that they're just the smartest, but I think that they have a really good pulse on the market. I think we are the market for a lot of our practice areas. And so like I started saying, I can't be a client of my own law firm if I charge $400 an hour and don't tell a client when we're going to be done and really just do as much work, even if it's inefficient, because that's what's going to make my business more money. That's not really great for the client. So I think folks who have had that experience or have been able to empathize with that have recognized we need to work in a different way in the profession. And pro bono work and legal aid and grant work, I think, is phenomenal. And we do that pretty well overall. But I really feel like the private sector in our profession has to step up and help bridge the access to justice gap, because hundreds of dollars an hour and hundreds of hours of work is just not feasible for most folks. Not even they're just above the legal aid line. I mean, I'm talking like probably upper middle class that just doesn't work for them. They don't have that kind of resource to write those blank checks. And I even think super wealthy are kind of going, what am I spending my money on here now? A little bit more than they used to. So I'd really love to see more of the private sector, individual law firms, solo, small firm, even big firms, which are trying to kind of make that tip really find a different way to practice that does serve the consumer more and isn't as attorney focused as we kind of have been for several decades.
And even though with all that in mind, even though this episode is going to air several months after we record it, at least right now, there are a lot of layoffs happening in big law. Mm-hmm. And so, like, what would you say to them or any other attorneys who are listening who are maybe hesitant to start their own firm and help fill this justice gap with opportunities for actually making okay money doing it?
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to them?
It's possible. And there's a community of folks like Matthew, like me and Jess, with the different practices. I mean, there's a bunch of us out there who have seen it work, have been really successful. I work 4 days a week and make well into six figure. Like, I'm doing great. And it's not to brag, but it's to show that you can have a life that is very fulfilling, very rewarding, and not sort of be burnt out by this work that I think we all came into to help people and that we ultimately love. So the fact that there are so many resources out there, I think it's just connecting with folks, reaching out, sending emails saying, hey, can you help me with this piece? I'm thinking about going out on my own. I have generally found that this community of kind of solopreneurs and legal entrepreneurs is really welcoming, gives plenty of their time, is, happy to do coffees or jump on a call or say, hey, this is what I use. Let me show you how to do this. So I would really just try and ingrain yourself into that network and that community and know that you absolutely can do it and will probably be a hell of a lot happier.
Yeah. That's extremely well put, and especially when you're not billing by the hour, you have more time to give. Your time is still valuable, but your ability to give back is there even more so. So since you're my first guest who's come on the show twice, I normally ask is a hot dog sandwich, but since you've already answered that question,
done that.
I'm going to ask you, is a calzone a sandwich and why?
Oh, interesting. If what are those peanut butter and jelly ones? Oh, they have a name. Uncrustables. If Uncrustables are a sandwich, then a calzone is a sandwich.
All right. I love it. You're the first one to tackle that. So where can everyone find you? The podcast, A Different Practice, that link will be in the show notes and at differentpractice.com. If anyone wants to look at, your law firm model, what's the firm website?
It is mylifelawyer.com. And please connect on LinkedIn if you are one of those folks thinking about taking the leap. Like I said, try and practice what I preach. Please connect. I'm happy to be a resource, but definitely check out A Different Practice as well.
All right, Lauren, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Matthew. It was great.
Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for sponsoring this show. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with someone you think would find a value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.